Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today, all about growing almond trees.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
You guys want to grow some almond trees, and we're going to help you get there. We've got your sources right here.
That's right, a whole stack of them.
A mix of practical guides and some pretty in-depth research.
Yeah,
So consider this your express lane to becoming an almond expert.
that's right. Basically, what we want to do is give you the knowledge so you can give your almond trees the best possible start in life.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about everything from finding the perfect spot in your garden all the way to understanding what these amazing trees need to thrive.
So first things first, climate.
Right.
A bunch of these sources are saying almonds really love a sunny Mediterranean climate.
Yeah, for sure.
So think, warm, dry summers,
Yeah.
and then mild winters with a bit of rain.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about matching the tree's natural habitat,
Sure.
right? So those hot summers are key for the almonds to ripen properly. But then you need those mild winters to make sure the tree gets enough chill hours.
Chill hours.
Yeah, that period of cold that they need for proper flowering and fruit set.
Ah, okay. So if you live in a place that's kind of like the Mediterranean,
Yeah.
you're golden.
You're in luck. Yeah.
But what if you're in a different climate? What if it's not quite right?
Well, then it gets a little more interesting.
Yeah.
If you live somewhere colder, you might have to think outside the box a little.
Okay.
Maybe find a nice sheltered spot that gets a lot of sun. Or even try growing your almond tree in a container.
Oh, so you can move it around.
Exactly. You can move it around. You can bring it inside if the weather gets really nasty.
Okay, cool. So one thing that really stood out to me from reading all this stuff was how important sun is for these trees.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Seriously, these guys are sun worshipers. They can't get enough of it.
Yeah, and for good reason. They need tons of energy to make those nuts.
Right.
And the sun's the best source for that, right? So when you're picking a place for your tree, make sure it's getting at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day.
Okay, got it. Sunny spot, happy almond tree.
Mm.
So now let's talk about actually getting these trees started. The WikiHow guide goes into a lot of detail about starting almonds from seed.
Mm-hmm.
And they even talk about this process called cold stratification.
Yeah.
What is that?
So it's basically a way to mimic the natural chilling period that some seeds need to break dormancy and germinate.
Interesting.
So you're kind of tricking the seed into thinking it's gone through winter.
Oh, that's cool. It's like we're recreating their natural journey
Exactly.
from seed to tree. But starting from seed seems like it takes a while.
It can be a bit of a slow burn, yeah. If you're looking for something faster, you could always go for a young almond sapling from a good nursery.
Oh, so you can kind of choose your own adventure.
That's right.
Patient route from seed or a faster route with a sapling. Okay, cool. But whether you start from seed or seedling, you got to choose the right almond variety.
Absolutely.
And all the sources are saying, make sure you pick a sweet almond variety.
Yeah, if you're planning on actually eating the nuts, that
Right, because there are different kinds of almonds,
there are. Yeah, you got your sweet almonds, the ones we eat, and then you have bitter almonds,
which we don't eat.
which you don't want to eat.
Okay.
Bitter almonds have this compound called amygdalin, which can be toxic.
Oh, wow.
So unless you're making almond-scented soap or something, stick with the sweet variety.
Yeah, sticking with the sweet stuff. All right, so even if you're dreaming of this big, beautiful almond tree in your garden, the guides are saying start small. Start in a pot.
Yeah, it's all about giving your tree the best possible start.
Okay.
A pot lets you control the environment, especially in those early stages. You can make sure the drainage is good, keep an eye on the soil moisture, and even protect it from bad weather.
So it's like a little nursery for the tree before it goes out into the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of giving your tree the best start, let's talk rootstocks. The Australian research paper really dives into how the rootstock you choose can affect how your tree grows.
Yeah, and this is where it gets a bit technical, but it's important stuff.
It is, yeah. They talk about Nimagard as a popular choice.
Okay. Nimagard Wyowen.
Nimagard is a tough one. It's known for being resistant to nematodes, those little worms that can damage roots.
Ah, okay.
And it also tends to produce smaller trees, which is good for people with smaller gardens.
So Nimagard is a good foundation.
Yeah, like a good solid base.
But the paper also mentions other rootstocks like Garnham and Bright's hybrid.
Right.
How do those compare?
So those are more vigorous. They'll give you bigger trees that spread out more.
Oh, okay.
They might be better if you have a lot of space and you really want a lot of nuts.
Okay.
But for smaller gardens, Nimagard is probably the way to go.
So many choices.
It's amazing how much goes into growing these trees even before you see a single almond.
Right.
It's all about setting your tree up for success right from the start.
Yeah, and once you've got that tree settled in its pot, that's when the real journey begins.
That's when the fun starts.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we've got our tree in its pot, soaking up the sun in a good spot, what's next?
Yeah, what's next on the to-do list?
Well, now it's all about giving it the care it needs to thrive. And that starts with watering.
Watering, okay. Almonds aren't exactly desert plants, but they don't like to be soggy either.
All right.
Right?
It's all about balance. You want consistent moisture, especially when it's hot, but you got to make sure that soil drains well.
Why is good drainage so important for almond trees?
Well, soggy soil, it basically suffocates the roots,
Oh, no.
makes them vulnerable to things like root rot and fungal diseases.
Yeah.
And those roots are vital. They're the lifeline of the tree. They absorb all the water and nutrients.
Yeah,
So if the roots aren't happy, the whole tree suffers.
right. So we're going for consistently moist, but never soggy.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So what about feeding our almond trees? Is there a special almond tree diet we need to know about?
Well, that's where the Saudi Arabian research paper comes in.
Okay.
They really dig into the science of almond nutrition.
Cool, yeah.
And they say it all starts with knowing your soil.
So it's like a blood test for your tree.
It's like getting a soil test, yeah, to understand what nutrients are already there.
Go ahead.
Once you know what your soil is missing, you can create a custom fertilizer plan.
Makes sense.
They even break down the different nutrients and what they do. The macronutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, those are essential for growth.
Okay.
And then you have the micronutrients like zinc and boron, which are important for flowering and nut development.
Wow. So it's not just throwing any old fertilizer on there. You have to be specific.
Exactly. You got to tailor it to your tree's needs.
Okay. What about the different ways to fertilize? I remember the paper talking about foliar feeding.
Ah, yes. Foliar feeding. That's where you apply liquid fertilizer directly to the leaves.
Oh, interesting.
It can be super effective, especially for micronutrients. It's like a quick
Mhm.
boost, bypasses the soil, and goes straight to where it's needed.
So like a vitamin shot for your almond tree.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay, so we've got watering, we've got feeding. What's next?
Let's talk about pruning.
Pruning. Okay.
Now, you might think pruning is just about making your tree look pretty,
Yeah, shaping it up.
but it's way more than that.
Okay. The WikiHow guide made it sound almost like an art form,
Yeah.
but they also said it's crucial for keeping the tree healthy.
Absolutely. Pruning helps air circulate within the canopy, which reduces the risk of fungal diseases.
Okay.
It also makes the branches stronger and can even lead to more nuts.
Wow. So pruning is like giving your tree a spa day and a health checkup at the same time.
Exactly.
I'm into it. Any tips for us beginners? Where do we even start?
Well, first get rid of any dead, diseased, or damaged branches.
All right, step one.
Then focus on thinning out the canopy. Remove any branches that are crossing or growing inwards. You want to create a nice open structure so the sunlight and air can reach every part of the tree.
So a well-ventilated, sun-kissed almond tree.
That's the goal.
Sounds lovely. Okay, let's move on to something that's always fascinated me. Pollination.
Yeah, pollination, it's a crucial step.
Most almond varieties, they need a partner to make nuts right.
That's right. Most of them are self-incompatible, meaning they need pollen from a different variety to fertilize their flowers.
So if we want those delicious almonds, we have to play matchmaker for our trees.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, how do we make sure our trees find their perfect match?
The easiest way is to plant at least 2 different almond varieties that bloom around the same time.
Okay.
That way, when the blossoms come out, the bees will do their thing, buzzing around and spreading the pollen.
So we're creating an almond dating scene.
Exactly.
Okay, what if you only have space for one tree? Are we out of luck?
Not necessarily. Remember the penta almond we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
That one's partially self-fertile.
So it could work.
It could be a good option for smaller gardens. And even with the self-incompatible varieties, there's always the manual method.
Oh, right. The WikiHow guide mentioned this thing called flower rubbing.
Flower rubbing, yeah. It's definitely hands-on.
Sounds kind of intimate for a tree.
You're basically collecting pollen from one variety and carefully transferring it to another.
Wow, it's amazing how much effort goes into each and every almond. From pollination to pest control to harvesting them at the right time.
It's a process.
Speaking of pests, that's something our listener needs to be prepared for, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Almond Board documents went deep into the world of almond enemies.
They did, and those documents are a great resource for understanding the challenges almond growers face.
Okay.
But don't let the long list of pests scare you.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
Right.
The more you know about potential threats, the better you'll be able to deal with them.
So let's dive into this world of almond pests. Give us the rundown on these tiny terrors and how to fight back.
All right, let's do it. Let's start with one of the most notorious almond pests, the peach twig borer.
Oh, the peach twig borer.
This little guy targets young, shoots he bores into them, and messes up the nutrient flow.
So what does that look like?
You'll see wilting dieback, maybe even some deformities in the new growth.
Yikes. Sounds like a real party pooper.
It can be. So how do we deal with this tiny twig terrorist?
Yeah. How do we fight back?
Well, first, remember, healthy trees are more resistant to pests.
Okay, good point.
So everything we've talked about, watering, feeding, pruning, it all helps.
It's all connected.
Exactly. But specifically for the peach twig borer, the almond board suggests using pheromone traps.
Pheromone traps.
Yeah, to monitor their activity. So you're not just spraying pesticides randomly, you're being strategic.
Okay, so we're outsmarting those pests.
Exactly.
I like it. All right, what about those creepy crawlies that make my skin crawl just thinking about them? Web-spinning mites.
Ugh, those tiny terrors.
Oh, no.
They can cause some serious damage. They suck the life out of the leaves. You'll see stippling, yellowing, even defoliation.
That's bad.
And they love dusty conditions.
So keeping things clean is part of the strategy.
Absolutely. The almond board talks about dust suppression as a key part of managing mites. You can use dust suppressants on orchard roads or even plant cover crops to help reduce dust.
Wow. So even something as simple as dust control can make a difference.
It can.
Okay, we've covered the tiny terrors. Now, what about the bigger, furrier pests that the almond board mentioned? The burrowing rodents.
Ah, yes, those furry bandits.
Those seem like a whole other level of problem.
They can be. Ground squirrels, pocket gophers, voles, they can all cause chaos in an almond orchard. Gnawing on roots, damaging trunks, stealing nuts.
Oh, no, they're stealing the nuts.
Yeah, they can be a real nuisance. So how do we keep them away?
Yeah, do we need to set up traps or something?
Trapping can be an option, but let's start with prevention.
Okay, idea.
The document suggests things like habitat modification, keeping the orchard floor clear of weeds and debris that give them cover.
Okay, so make it less inviting for them.
Exactly. Exclusion techniques like fencing or tree guards can also help, especially for young trees.
So it's like building a fortress around our almond trees.
Kinda. But if those measures aren't enough, you might have to resort to something more drastic.
Like traps or bait.
Yeah, but if you do that, it's crucial to do it responsibly. Follow all the safety guidelines and regulations.
Of course.
We want to protect our trees, but we also want to minimize any harm to the environment.
Right, it's all about balance.
Exactly.
Okay, so even when it comes to pest management, knowledge is our best weapon. Understanding the enemy, whether it's a tiny mite or a burrowing gopher, helps us develop an effective strategy.
Absolutely.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. From choosing the perfect spot for your almond tree to nurturing it through its early years. But there's one crucial stage we haven't talked about yet. Harvest time.
Ah, yes, the reward for all your hard work.
It's what it's all about, right?
Exactly. But don't think of harvesting as just a one-time event. It's a process that starts long before you're taking those branches and watching those almonds rain down.
Yeah, the Gardener's Path article really captured that feeling of joy.
Yeah.
The culmination of all that effort.
Yeah,
But I bet there's a lot more to it than just waiting for the almonds to fall.
there is, yeah. Harvesting almonds is all about timing.
Okay.
You harvest too early and the almonds won't have their full flavor and texture.
Right.
Harvest too late and you risk weather damage or worse, those furry bandits we talked about making off with your nut bounty.
So how do we know when it's the perfect time? What signs should we be looking for?
The Australian research paper on early harvesting dives deep into this. It's fascinating stuff.
Okay, tell us more.
They talk about the importance of monitoring whole split percentage.
Whole split percentage.
Yeah, basically it's the point when the almond, that outer fleshy layer starts to split open.
Okay.
That's a sign that the nut inside is maturing.
So it's like a visual cue that tells us those almonds are getting close.
Exactly.
But why early harvesting? Why not wait until the holes are completely open?
Well, that's the interesting part.
Yeah.
The research suggests that early harvesting, bringing in those almonds just as the hulls begin to split, can actually lead to higher nutrient content and better flavor.
Oh, really?
It's all about catching them at their peak of freshness and quality.
Interesting. It's like picking a piece of fruit at its perfect ripeness.
Yeah.
You want that flavor and nutrition at its best.
Exactly.
Hey.
And the paper even gives specific hull split percentages for different almond varieties as a guide for early harvesting. It's a blend of science and practical know-how that can make a big difference in the quality of your harvest.
This is what I love about this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just about following rules. It's about understanding the why behind those rules
Right.
and using that knowledge to make informed decisions as an almond grower.
Absolutely. That's what it takes to be successful. It's
Yeah.
not just about following a recipe. It's about understanding the tree, the environment, all the factors that come into play.
It's a whole system.
It is. And once you've got those basics down, you can start experimenting,
Oh,
trying different varieties, different harvesting techniques, even exploring the world of almond processing.
right. From almond butter to almond milk to those delicious roasted almonds we all love. The possibilities are endless.
And that's the beauty of growing your own almonds.
Yeah.
It's not just about the end product. It's about the journey, the connection to nature, the satisfaction of nurturing something from a tiny seed to a bountiful tree.
I love that. Well said. I think we've equipped our listener with everything they need to embark on their own almond growing adventure.
I think so too.
We've covered the basics of planting and care, delved into the fascinating science of almond nutrition and pest management, and even explored the art of harvesting those delicious nuts at their peak.
It's been a great journey. And remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole world of knowledge out there waiting to be discovered and a lifetime of almond growing experiences to be had.
Yeah. So go forth and grow those almonds. Don't be afraid to experiment, to learn, and to share what you discover.
Exactly.
All right. Happy almond growing, everyone.
Happy growing.
So we talked about all those little pests in the last part.
Yeah, we did.
Lots of little critters that could be a problem for our almond trees.
Right, but don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Remember what we've been saying, the key to success is understanding your almond tree,
Right.
knowing what it needs. And the same goes for pest management.
Okay. So instead of freaking out at the first sign of a bug,
Exactly.
we need to know how to identify them and how to deal with them.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, right?
Okay, so let's talk about some of these almond enemies and, more importantly, how to fight back.
Okay, let's start with a notorious one, the peach twig borer.
The peach twig borer. What's that?
This little critter targets young shoots,
Oh, no.
bores into them, and disrupts the nutrient flow.
So what does that look like if my tree has a peach twig borer?
You'll notice some wilting, maybe some dieback, even deformities in the new growth.
Yikes. That sounds bad.
It can be. So how do we deal with this tiny twig terrorist?
Yeah, how do we fight back?
Well, first off, remember, healthy trees are more resistant to pests.
Okay, good point.
So all that stuff we talked about, watering, feeding, pruning, it all plays a role.
It's all connected.
Exactly. It's all about giving your tree the best defense. But specifically for the peach twig borer, the almond board suggests using pheromone traps.
Pheromone traps. What are those?
They're traps that use pheromones to attract the peach twig borers.
Oh.
So you can monitor their activity, see how many are out there.
So we're not just spraying pesticides everywhere.
Exactly. You're being strategic.
I like it. All right. What about those creepy crawlies that make my skin crawl just thinking about them web-spinning mites?
Oh, yeah, those tiny terrors, they can cause a lot of damage, too.
I know.
They suck the life out of almond leaves. You'll see stippling, yellow, even defoliation.
Oh, that's no good.
And they thrive in dusty conditions.
Dusty conditions, so keeping things clean is part of the solution.
It's a big part of it.
Mhm.
The almond board emphasizes dust suppression as a cultural practice for managing mites. You can use dust suppressants on orchard roads or even plant cover crops to help reduce the dust.
Wow. So something as simple as dust control can make a difference.
It can make a big difference.
Okay, we've covered the tiny terrors. Now, what about the bigger, furrier pests? The almond board mentioned the burrowing rodents.
Ah, yes, those furry bandits.
They seem like a whole other level of problem.
They can be ground squirrels, pocket gophers, voles. They can all wreak havoc in an almond orchard, gnawing on roots, damaging trunks, even stealing those precious nuts.
Oh, no, stealing the nuts.
They can be a real nuisance, so how do we keep them away?
Yeah, do we need to set traps?
Trapping can be an option, but let's start with some preventative measures.
Okay, sounds good.
The document suggests habitat modification, things like keeping the orchard floor clear of weeds and debris.
So basically making it less inviting for them.
Exactly. Make it less appealing for them to hang out.
Okay.
Exclusion techniques like fencing or tree guards can also help, especially for young trees.
So we're building a fortress around our trees.
Pretty much. But if those measures aren't enough, you might have to resort to something more drastic.
Like traps or bait.
Exactly. But if you do go that route, it's crucial to do it responsibly.
Of course.
Follow all the safety guidelines and regulations. We want to protect our trees, but we also want to minimize harm to the environment.
Right. It's all about balance.
Exactly, finding that balance.
Okay, so even when it comes to pest management, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Understanding our enemy, whether it's a tiny mite or a burrowing gopher, helps us come up with a good plan.
It does, and it makes it a lot less scary.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today, from choosing the right spot for your almond tree to protecting it from those pesky pests. But there's one crucial stage we haven't talked about yet: harvest time.
Ah, yes, the reward for
Yes.
all your hard work.
It's what it's all about, right?
It is, but don't think of harvesting as just a one-time event. It's a process that starts long before you're shaking those branches and watching those almonds fall.
Yeah, the Gardener's Path article really painted a beautiful picture of that moment.
It is a special moment.
But I bet there's a lot more to it than just waiting for the almonds to drop.
Harvesting almonds is all about timing.
Timing.
Because you harvest too early, the almonds won't have developed their full flavor and texture.
Right.
And if you harvest too late, you risk weather damage, or even worse, those furry bandits we talked about making off with your almond bounty.
So how do we know when it's the perfect time? What are the signs?
Well, the Australian research paper on early harvesting dives deep into this topic.
Okay, tell us more.
They emphasize the importance of monitoring hull split percentage.
Hull split percentage, what's that?
It's basically the point when the almond hull, that outer fleshy layer, starts to split open.
Oh, okay.
That's a sign that the nut inside is maturing.
So it's like a visual cue.
Exactly. It's like the almond is telling you, hey, I'm almost ready.
But why early harvesting? Why not just wait until the holes are wide open?
Well, that's the interesting part.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The research suggests that early harvesting, bringing in those almonds just as the hulls begin to split, can actually lead to higher nutrient content and better flavor.
Oh, wow, really?
It's all about capturing those almonds at their peak.
Interesting. So it's like picking a piece of fruit at its perfect ripeness.
Exactly. You want that flavor and nutrition at its best.
Okay, so how do we know when to do that?
The paper actually gives specific hull split percentages for different almond varieties.
Wow. Okay.
It's really a mix of science and know-how that can make a big difference in your harvest.
I love that about this whole deep dive. It's not just about following the rules. It's about understanding why those rules exist.
Exactly.
And then using that knowledge to make the best decisions for your almond trees.
That's what it's all about, becoming an informed almond grower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered planting care, pest management, and even harvesting.
Yeah, we've been through a lot.
What else is there to know about growing almonds?
Well, there's always more to learn,
Of course.
but I think we've given our listeners a great foundation to get started.
I think so too. They're well on their way to becoming almond experts.
Exactly, and remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole world of almond knowledge out there.
Right.
So go forth and grow those almonds.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to experiment, to try new things, to learn, and to share your discoveries with the world.
I love it. Happy almond growing, everyone.
Yeah, happy growing.
Okay, so we've talked about planting and care and all the pesky pests that can try to sabotage our almond growing dreams.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
But now let's get to the good stuff.
The reward for all that hard work.
Harvest time.
Exactly.
I mean, the Gardener's Path article made it sound so idyllic.
Yeah.
You know, shaking those branches and watching the almonds rain down.
It really is something special.
But I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely more to it. Harvesting almonds is all about timing.
Okay, so tell me about that.
You harvest too early,
Mm.
and the almonds won't have their full flavor and texture. And if you wait too long, you risk weather damage, or even worse, those furry bandits we talked about making off with your almond bounty.
Oh no, not the furry bandit.
So it's a delicate balance.
So how do we know when to strike? When is the perfect time to harvest those almonds?
Well, the Australian research paper on early harvesting had some really interesting insights on this.
Okay, tell me more.
They talk about monitoring hull split percentage.
Hull split percentage.
Yeah, basically it's the point when the almond hull, the outer fleshy layer, starts to split open.
Okay.
That's a sign that the nut inside is getting ripe.
So it's like a visual cue that tells us those almonds are almost ready.
Exactly. It's like the almond is saying, hey, I'm almost ready to go.
But why early harvesting? Why not just wait until those hulls are completely open?
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
The research suggests that harvesting those almonds just as the hulls begin to split can actually lead to higher nutrient content and better flavor.
Oh, wow. So it's like picking a piece of fruit at just the right moment.
Exactly. You want to capture that perfect ripeness, when the flavor and nutrition are at their peak.
That makes sense, and I guess it also helps us stay one step ahead of those furry bandits.
Exactly. You don't want to give them any chance to steal your hard-earned almonds.
So how do we know exactly when to harvest? I mean, are there any guidelines for this early harvesting thing?
The paper actually gives specific whole split percentages for different almond varieties.
Oh, wow. So it's pretty precise.
It is. It's really a combination of science and experience, knowing your almond varieties and keeping a close eye on those holes.
You know what I love about this whole deep dive is that it's not just about blindly following rules. It's about understanding the why behind those rules
Absolutely.
and then using that knowledge to make the best decisions for our almond trees.
That's what it's all about, becoming an informed almond grower.
Exactly. All right, so we've covered planting care, pest management, harvesting. We've really gone through the whole almond growing journey.
We have. It's been quite a journey.
And I feel like our listeners are well on their way to becoming almond experts.
I think so too. They've got all the information they need to get started.
And the best part is this is just the beginning.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discover about the amazing world of almonds.
Exactly. So go out there, experiment, try new things, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Mistakes are part of the learning process.
That's right. And most importantly, have fun.
Yes, have fun growing those delicious almonds.
All right. Happy almond growing, everyone.
Happy growing.